I know that my Redeemer lives, that I shall rise again. I know that my Redeemer lives, that I shall rise again. The Lord is my shepherd, there is nothing I shall want. The Lord is my shepherd, there is nothing I shall want.
1 Thessalonians. We do not want to be unaware, brothers and sisters, about those who have fallen asleep, so that you may not grieve like the rest who have no hope.
I know that many of you are friends and family, but some maybe you're even unknown to the family, and so we thank you for your generosity in coming. Obviously, Jim touched a lot of people, and so it's always a wonderful thing to see so many people, even from different faiths and traditions, coming here to support the family and to pray for Jim. Thank you. As I was looking out, I couldn't help but be reminded of another famous person's funeral, and that was Otto von Habsburg of Austria. I don't know if any of you saw the news when he died a few years ago. He was the last crown prince, if you will, of Austria, and he would have been king had World War I not happened and had Prince Ferdinand not been assassinated. So the thing was that his funeral, they had a very beautiful tradition where they take the royal family, they take the casket up to the door of the church, and they knock 3 times on the huge iron door, and the friar inside says, "Who wishes to enter?" And the royal official stands there and reads, "Otto of Austria, once crown prince of Hungary, royal prince of Hungary and Bohemia, of Dalmatia, Croatia, Slavonia, its Grand Duke of Tuscany and Krakow, Duke of Lorraine and Salzburg," on and on and on. He reads this whole list of titles, and the friar responds, "We do not know him." They knock again. The friar says, "Who wishes to enter?" And he begins again to read his academic titles this time. He says, "Dr. Otto von Habsburg, President of the Pan-European Union, Member and President of the European Parliament, Honorary Doctor of many universities, Honorary Citizen of many cities in Europe, Recipient of high civil and ecclesiastical honors, awards and medals which he was given in recognition of decades-long struggle for freedom of peoples, for justice and right." And the friar says, "We do not know him." And they knock a 3rd time. The friar says, "Who wishes to enter?" And he says, "Otto, a mortal and sinful man." And the doors open. I think it's beautiful because it reminds us of a much ignored truth. We can't take anything with us when we die. And death is the great equalizer. Whether we are a king like Otto, or a broadcaster for 39 years, or we're just a humble public servant, rich or poor, man or woman, all of us will die one day. And we can't take any of these worldly accomplishments or titles with us. We leave the world as we entered it, humble, carrying nothing. A funeral is incredibly important for all of us, because it wakes us up. It reminds us that this life is very short. And if we've been coasting along, we are challenged to refocus on what is really important so we are ready when our turn comes. That's the heavy part. But there's also something joyful about a funeral if one has faith. Because indeed, if we didn't have faith, if we just believed that death was the end, then we should just go and cry for a few days until we get over it. But that's not the reality. That's not what Christian hope is, and that's not what Jim believed. Jim believed that, in fact, we are destined for eternity. And this life of 75 years almost that he lived is nothing in comparison with eternity. You know, I was very struck as I was meeting with the family and as I was reading through the obituaries, hearing so much about the great things that Jim has done. And I think there was one thing that was missing in the obituaries, a glaring omission. People said he was honest, he was trustworthy, he was a great friend, he was a great father, he was all these things, and they forgot to mention why. That to me was the question, why? Why was he an honest man? Why was he faithful to his wife of more than 50 years? Why did he make time for his family when he could have easily just climbed the corporate ladder and just achieved limitless success, if you will? It's because he was a Catholic Christian. And because he was a Catholic gentleman, and he believed in Jesus Christ, and he tried his best to imitate Jesus. And you know, his whole life, it's really amazing. If we think of the Christian life, it focuses around sacramental moments. Jim was brought here to the church as a child and baptized in the font. Not this church, but he was baptized in the font. And then, when he was a little bit older, he was brought back to the church, received First Holy Communion, brought back to the church, was confirmed, came back to the church with Marilyn, was married in the church before God, and brought all of his children then after him for this same being birthed into the world, and now for one last time his body is brought here to the church to say goodbye. But really it is not goodbye, but really a see you later. Because for the eyes of faith we know that we are bringing him here to the church precisely because where he is going is to be with Jesus. That's why we're here, is to pray him to heaven. We recognize that heaven, no one deserves it. But God wishes it for each one of us. He wants all of us to be with him in heaven. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, so that anyone who believes in him would not perish, but have eternal life. We heard in the gospel the Father's tender care for each one of us through Christ. Jesus says, "This is the will of the Father, that I would not lose anyone who has been given to me." And who are the ones who has been given to him? The ones who accept him in faith and are reborn through water and the Holy Spirit.
James Owen Howe was the epitome of a broadcast journalist. Jim started his broadcast career in Crescent City, California. He was there all of about 6 weeks before the company convinced him to transfer to their station in Billings, Montana, a move he wasn't sure he wanted to make, but he did. He thought he'd never get out. After that came Pendleton. Then in 1962 he found the station that would be his home for the next 39 years, KEX. While at KEX, Jim survived 7 owners, 12 general managers, and 14 program directors. But as he said, who's counting? He did it because he was the best at his chosen profession. I kidded Jim about the fact that when he started at KEX in 1962, I was in the 2nd grade. He smiled and shook his head the way he always did, and laughed and said, "Cooper, you sure know how to make a guy feel old." KEX was the station that my parents listened to, so for all the big news stories when I was growing up, I got the details from Jim and the others in the KEX newsroom. The birth of Packy at what was then the Portland Zoo in 1962, the Columbus Day storm that same year, the floods of 1964, and so much more. Little did I know that one day I would have the privilege of working side by side with the voice that had been heard in my home for so many years. Jim hired me in 1987. I remember the Saturday morning job interview like it was yesterday. I was incredibly nervous. I went out and bought a brand new sport coat at Meyer & Frank. And with the coat, I wore slacks, a dress shirt, and tie. I knew there was a dress code at KEX, and I wanted to make a good first impression. When I arrived at the station, Jim met me at the front door, wearing a Nike tracksuit and tennis shoes. Needless to say, I felt just a little overdressed. It didn't take me long to realize that not only was Jim Howe a terrific boss, but he was also becoming a very good friend. I treasured that friendship. I would often ask him advice, especially about raising daughters. I have 2 girls. Jim, of course, raised 5 beautiful daughters. I saw how well they all turned out, and I knew that anything that he would tell me would be advice I could take to heart. Jim taught the people who worked with him how to do radio news and how to do it right. Of course, he wanted us to always get the story first. Jim was competitive like that. But above all, he wanted to make sure we got it right. And if that meant being second on the story, so be it. Jim never once compromised his ethics when running the KEX newsroom. Even the politicians and business leaders who were the subjects of many of the stories that the KEX newsroom produced respected Jim. They weren't always happy about the stories we did, but they couldn't say those stories weren't fair or accurate. Jim trusted me and others in the newsroom, and by him trusting us, we were better able to trust ourselves. We did good work because we knew that he stood behind us 100%, and there was no way we wanted to let this man down. We had Jim's back because he always had ours. My former KEX colleagues, Pat Boyle and Bob Miller, were right on the money when they told the Oregonian reporter writing the retrospective story on Jim a few days ago that all of us who worked with Jim would not have hesitated to take a bullet for him. And a major reason why was the fact that Jim wouldn't ask us to do anything he wouldn't do himself. He would get right into the trenches with us. I had been at KEX about a year when Jim told me about the group that he started in 1970 called the Mount Hood Nature Study and Rhododendron Blight Eradication Society. You've heard about it. So-called blight fighting was, of course, nothing more than an excuse to camp overnight in the Mount Hood National Forest once a year, grill some steaks, New York strip, drink some beer, smoke cigars, and play cards. You had to be invited to become a member of this august group. I can still remember the day that Jim asked me to join them for their next trip up to the mountain. Last July was the first time in 44 years that Jim didn't make the trip up the White River. He was starting his chemotherapy that week. He asked me to stand in for him and run the weekend, which of course I did, but those were mighty big shoes to fill. These few words that I say today can never really convey the love, respect, and admiration I had for Jim. I will be forever grateful for the things he did for me and that he allowed me to be his friend. Jim often said that if he had not spent his life in radio, he would have spent his life wishing he were in radio. I think I can speak for everyone who ever worked for Jim or listened to him on the radio that we're all very happy that his wish indeed came true. Jim Howe was the definition of a family man, and his 5 daughters adored their father. They've written some thoughts about their dad and what it was like to grow up in that house on Elm Street in Beaverton. Because they loved their father so much, none of them felt they could read this here today through their tears. So they've asked me to convey their thoughts. Girls, I'll try my best. Our dad's favorite form of communication was the story. He told stories for a living, but he was never off the storytelling clock. Growing up in our house meant sitting around the kitchen table at dinner time and telling stories about our day. It meant listening to others tell stories about their days. At that table, the goings-on at Raleigh Hills Elementary School were just as important as any news story that Dad was working on. In fact, we would contend Raleigh Hills was more important as he was outnumbered 6-1. Mom's stories usually were about Raleigh Hills too. As we grew up and moved out of the house, it just meant saving our stories up to tell at family gatherings. Our husbands always give us a bad time about not being able to get a word in edgewise at family gatherings because it's just because we have so many years of practice. He loved hearing all of our stories, and he usually knew some additional fact about the people we were talking about. Admittedly, sometimes his fact-based journalistic training worked against him in a house with 5 girls. Sometimes logic just didn't apply. It was interesting to watch Dad use stories to build relationships. You see, you have to have a story about someone. If you have a story about someone, it means you've actually gotten to know them. You've had a conversation with them. Not a digital LOL type conversation, but a real person-to-person conversation. We were always amazed at how he knew as much about Walt the mechanic who worked on our car as he did about some of the prominent folks that were in the news. And that held true in later years. He had stories about the neighbors up at the cabin on the Sandy Am, along with the guys who worked at the local hardware store. He knew everyone had a story, and it was his job to get it. Here's what Dad taught us about creating a good story. First, have something to say. Be interested in something, be doing something, be involved in something, and talk about it. Dad always had something going on that he could talk about, be it work or outside interests. His work always provided a source of conversation. There was always more, including the wooden boats he collected for a time, the cabin he has up on the little North Fork of the Sandy Am, and his photography. Let people ask you questions about it. Your story will be better for it. Second, put your family in your story. They are the best thing you will ever have. Mom was the center of the universe in all of Dad's stories. He thought of her in all that he did. Well, maybe except for that one weekend a year he spent blank fighting. And we sincerely apologize for all the stories you had to listen to about our exploits over the years. He worked a job that provided an easy excuse for minimal family time, but he was all about family. We remember many summer weekends where he would work the morning shift on Friday, come home, and pack us all in the car to go camping at Beverly Beach or Detroit Lake. We would get camp set up, and the first thing he would do would be to take a nap. We could not for the life of us figure out how he could possibly take a nap with so much fun stuff to do. Thirdly, add some humor to your story. And humor is everywhere. Anyone who talked to Dad for more than 2 minutes knew he had a huge sense of humor. And again, it was interesting to watch the way he used humor. We grew up in a unique time when an AM radio station had the majority of the radio listening audience in the Portland area, especially on snow days. TV hadn't gotten into the school closure listing business at that point. There was no internet, no automatic phone calls. You had to listen to the radio. Lots of people knew who Dad was. He would use his sense of humor to immediately put people at ease and let them know he was just a regular guy. One of his favorite lines was, anyone with 5 daughters had to have a sense of humor. And that came in handy, especially in instances like the time one of us got into a fender bender with the family car and Dad had to repair the right corner of the back bumper. Following week, a different one of us got into a fender bender with the family car and he had to replace the left corner. He would always tell people he went years without seeing an empty bathroom or a phone not being used. We heard those stories. And finally, make your story your own. Dad was always putting his own spin on things. Don't just have a family reunion. Host the Fay Family Cinnamon Roll Open Golf Tournament, complete with the awarding of a hideous blue polyester champion's jacket from Goodwill. Don't just have a family cabin, but give it a name, a logo, and its own line of sportswear. Don't just have a group of poker buddies, or blackjack. Create the Mount Hood Nature Study and Rhododendron Blight Eradication Society, complete with officers and bylaws, so people mistakenly think you're an environmental group doing good deeds. Dad showed us that if you mix all of this together, you will have a story that will be told forever and ever. We love you, Dad. Kathy, Patty, Carolyn, Susie, and Sharon.
you in His mercy. May you find eternal life. There is one thing I ask of the Lord, that He grant me my heartfelt desire, to dwell in the courts of God every day of my life in His presence. Believe in me shall not thirst. No one can come to me unless the Father beckons, and I will raise you up, and I will raise you up, and I will raise you up on the last day. The bread that I will give is my flesh and if you eat of this bread, you shall live forever. Stay of the flesh of the Son of Man, and I will raise you up, and I will raise you up, and I will raise you up on the land.
People, because then Marilyn can see, you know, people who are here, 'cause it's so hard to remember everybody, but
Thanks so much for coming.
Oh, I would call.
hello, darling.
Nice to see
Somebody from the legislature, from the Congress would show up.
Hey, Dick, you're on video. Cheryl, say hi to Ron. Hey.
Good to have.
It's fun.
And videos on
Yeah. Hey.
Let's see over to the side.
Yes, absolutely.
You're
I'm just saying.
I got up to about 70 miles an hour. Oh my God. And I thought those two old women are going to run me into the ground.
I'm trying to go say hi to him.
I'm used to it. Yeah, I can't remember where you're staying. Why do they got you staying? I know some of the teams.
Yeah, well,
I'm brilliant. Obviously, when he was doing Howe, we were together a lot because.
So now that I got him, who did I get? Tell me who's who. I don't know.
The guy on the left is Daryl
with the bald
Lonnie.
head?
Yeah, and he's the guy that used to do the Beaver games with Jim.
Oh, okay.
And they traveled all over the country.
Yeah.
And then the guy on the right is the new Beaver announcer now. He does all their
fun.
sports.
Fun.
And then the other guy with the red thing in his jacket, that's Bill Schonley, who's a legend, was the Blazer broadcaster for 30 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. So I'm glad you got that footage. That's funny. It's funny that's you got me up. That's good.
I hope so.
Better to get that than talking to one of my cousins or something.
I know.
Get the celebrity.
I know.
Perfect.
Well, I'm glad you know, because my brothers were both in the business. My younger brother used to head up the news station in San Diego.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
But he was one of the news directors, you know. But he wouldn't maybe know these names, but anyway.
Yeah, I know Daryl Lonnie's going to try to sneak out, but that was good he was here.
Well, I tried to take a video of the talk. I got a video of the talk. I just hope the sound picked up, because I don't know, I think I was close enough. I was hearing it in my ear, so hopefully it picked up on the phone.
So the girls all took off over here.
So you guys have had quite a basketball season.
Yeah, we've got a really good team.
Well, real good coach. So are you still in a playoff?
We've had that. Well, we just won a big tournament.
I know you won that one, but I didn't know what was.
No, we're still in our regular season with all the teams in the area, and then that goes for another month. And then the state championship is over in Bend in March. So we'll be.
So how do you qualify for that?
You win. You finish first or second in the tournament, which we've won almost all the tournaments we've been in.
I got my hair on you.
We're multi-qualified. So.
Oh, okay, good. So you know you're going.
Yeah.
And that'll be in about a month.
Yeah, it's in mid-March, so we'll. Yeah, I got the really good group of sixth graders that are just unbelievable. And usually, I mean, like if you look at all the
now,
other
what
grades,
is it? Is it a school league?
It's just a school league, and we've got just a bunch of all-star caliber kids. I mean, Asher's really, 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 really good, and I've got two tall kids that are really good, and I got a kid that's the fastest kid in the Northwest.
When they are, like, she goes to middle school next year, or this is middle school?
This is middle school.
So the sixth grade, so they'll be together for a few years?
Yeah, and it's kind of an AAU thing. It's called Sherwood Youth Basketball, so it's not necessarily through the school.
Oh, it isn't.
But it is just all the kids in Sherwood.
Yeah.
So anyway,
well, I'm sure you put a lot of time into it.
Even in Sherwood, it's like the sixth grade class, for whatever reason, is just loaded with athletes for all sports. So fifth graders don't do well. The seventh, eighth, high school doesn't.
It just happened.
So the high school coach is already excited about the sixth grade class.
So it happened to
I happen to be the coach. So I get more credit than I deserve
because you could have had the fifth grade class.
Right. If Asher was a year younger, I wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Maybe go to Spain.
Oh wow.
Depends on whether I know.
I was out. I don't know who I got a video of, except Jim was all excited because I got a video with him and.
She's randomly filming people, and she doesn't even know.
Hopefully, my finger wasn't in front of the lens when I did that.
Well, no, I've talked to my partner.
But he knows who they are.
I was talking to my partner. Bill Schonley walked up to talk to my partner. So the three of us were kind of sitting there, and then she was filming.
Oh, fine. He's all excited. Yeah, that's a good idea. You want to get in line and get some? Sure, I'm
I'll take off. All right, you taking off? All right, we'll catch up soon. Okay, Robert.
Everybody's working.
Marilyn, you probably don't remember me. I'm Ron and Mary Lou Dove.
Oh, wait a minute.
Good to see you. I'm sorry I'm seeing you on the
Yeah.
Look great.
Are they going to do another? Hey, John. Hey. Hi, good to see you. Yes.
Hey, Declan.
Declan, hi, Judy. How are you? You're braces now.
No, it's a retainer.
Oh, it's a retainer?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Now, hold on, we're gonna.
Hi, how are you?
Fine.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see. Now we need a fork
Fork and napkin.
and a napkin. They're pretty thick.
Oh, gee, thanks.
This is both. You're not going to see it like paying that at McDonald's. It's not like
Oh, yeah.
okay.
Yeah. You know what that means?
I know not too much, but
It's hard to cut.
it is. So you guys are going to clean up afterwards? Yep. I'll back the car in. You know where she lives? Yeah, right by the chart house. Yeah.
Well, I didn't know if I was going to have.
Wow. All that food. Wonderful, thank you.
Oh, it's pretty good.
That looks wonderful.
Oh.
Well, if they're going to talk, I'd like to be here, and I don't know if anybody is, but I thought I heard they were going to be talking. Maybe. You know what, Jerry? There's a slideshow, I think. Oh, okay. Well, if they give a talk, I want to. Oh, okay. Yeah, I see some coffee over there. So.
Okay.